Now, I want to talk about one of the Braves' division rivals, so one of their teams of direct competition this year, and that is the New York Mets. They have certainly been a busy bunch of bees this offseason, and they have not stopped for 1 second to even smell the roses, ironically because, again, they've been busy bees. But the Mets have spent a ton of money, and I mean a ton. More money than I could even fathom having. That's how much money they've spent this offseason. And I want to take a little bit of a different approach than some other personalities or podcasters or whatever have taken. And I want to kind of talk about whether I think the Mets spending spree is going to be good for baseball. So let me start out with this. I think that the Mets spending this much money is cool. It's fun. I think that baseball players should be paid what they are worth, and I think that it's great. I think that more MLB owners should be willing to spend money. I've talked about it on my channel before. How in the world can the Oakland Athletics or the Tampa Bay Rays or the Pittsburgh Pirates or some of these other smaller market teams compete if their owners won't spend the money, or if they don't have the money to spend like other owners do? It's very difficult. And I know that certain organizations are very prideful about that. For instance, the Rays, and they have been very successful as well. So I know that some fans wouldn't want them to have the ability to spend, $150 million on a player or $350 million on a player, because it wouldn't be adherent to the kind of team that they are. But I just feel like it would be so much more fun, especially a couple of years ago, if, the Rays had a chance to sign a Justin Verlander or a Garrett Cole or a Max Scherzer or any of these other big contract players that would really solidify the top of their rotation or the heart of their lineup, whatever it is. I just think that it would have been a lot of fun. But I digress. The Mets spending this much money, while it is fun and while it is really, really cool to see players getting paid, I personally think that it is not going to be the best thing for the long-term health of baseball. Because when you've got teams that are just going to wipe the floor with all these big free agents, it's going to be difficult for other teams to get guys that they need or keep guys that they already have or so on and so forth. And it also doesn't guarantee World Series victories. It really doesn't. I mean, you just think about the Yankees and the Dodgers. The last handful of seasons have had the two highest payrolls in the league. The Dodgers won the World Series the COVID year in 2020. But other than that, the Yankees and Dodgers haven't won anything with those crazy payrolls. They haven't. Now, how crazy has the Mets spending spree been? Now, I know that we've seen teams have really high payrolls in the past. We've seen teams really just go nuts in terms of, paying luxury tax and all that stuff. But what the Mets have done this year and last year has been completely unprecedented. No baseball team has ever been willing to spend this kind of money, pay this kind of tax, and do what they are doing right now. Let me give you an illustration of how much money the Mets have spent. Every player that I am going to name, until obviously I tell you otherwise, is going to be guys that the Mets have signed this year alone, and how much money their contracts are worth annually. Not total, but annually. Justin Verlander, $43 million. Jose Quintana, $13 million. David Robertson, $10 million. Brandon Nimmo, $20 million. Kodai Senga, $15 million. Edwin Diaz, $20 million. Omar Narvaez, that happened earlier today at the time of recording, $8 million. Traded for Brooks Raley, $4.5 million. Signed Daniel Vogelbach. I also believe that happened either earlier today or earlier this week. $1.5 million. And all of that was just this offseason. That's a lot of annual money to be handing out just this year. Now let's look at last year, what the Mets did last offseason, because I think that, time just goes so fast, we tend to not think about this, but I really wanted to take a deep dive into how much the Mets spent last year as well, and it shocked me how much money the Mets spent last year and then did the same thing this year. Check this out. Max Scherzer, $43 million. Eduardo Escobar, $10 million. Trevor May, $8 million. James McCann, $10 million. Again, this is all annually. Francisco Lindor, $34 million. Starling Marte, $19 million. It's actually 19.5, but I'm being nice and I'm rounding down. Mark Canha, $11 million. Again, it's actually 11.5, but I'm being nice and I'm rounding down. All the players that I just mentioned right there were all either signed or traded for last year. And then obviously the list before was just this year. So this is 2 off seasons of work. If you add up all of the contracts that I just said, the annual value of all of those contracts, and by the way, those contracts, those are guys that are just still on the team. Unless, somebody like a Mark Canha or an Eduardo Escobar has left at this point, which I don't think they have. I think they are still on the team. I believe this list is just guys that are on the team right now. I'm not even including guys that they may have signed last year for a handful of millions of dollars, and they're not even on the team anymore. This is just guys that are actively on the team right now and going into 2023 that I'm counting. In just the last 2 off seasons, the New York Mets have increased their payroll by $264 million per year. Just in the last 2 seasons, they have signed $264 million worth of annual contracts. That's just per year. Now, guys like Francisco Lindor, Edwin Diaz, Justin Verlander, Brandon Nimmo, Starling Marte, these are guys that have multi-year contracts. And for Lindor, for obviously Nimmo, for Diaz, these are guys that have 5-year contracts. So you're talking about a team that has probably spent just in the last 2 off seasons on contracts $1 billion? Maybe a little bit less than that, maybe like 800, 900 million, whatever it is, but 360 plus for Lindor, 100 plus million for Diaz, 160 for Nimmo, 75 for Senga, 26 for Quintana, somewhere in the 95 to 100-ish range, 96 I guess for Verlander. I mean, you're going to get up to 800 million probably, or $1 billion by the time you're done, counting all that money. I mean, that is insane how much money the Mets have just handed out just in the last, 400-ish days. Maybe not even, because obviously the offseason last year had to do, it was kind of delayed a little bit because of the strike, because of, or at least the play stoppage, right? So my guess is it's only been about a year since all these contracts have been handed out and all these trades have happened. And you're talking about handing out $1 billion worth of money and $264 million of annual money. $264 million, by the way, as payroll would probably be, just as total payroll for your entire team, would be top 5 or top 10 in the league just by itself. Probably top 5, honestly. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I wouldn't be shocked if it was. The Mets' payroll right now is projected to be at $353 million at the start of the 2023 season, should all of the guys on these current contracts stick around and not get traded or released or whatever the case may be. $350 million. No team has dared to go as far as the Mets have gone. Absolute anarchy. It's crazy how much money the Mets are spending. And I don't know if it's a good thing. I think we'll see. I think this is the experiment, right? This is patient zero. The Mets are patient zero. We're going to see how far this payroll is going to take them. Is it going to be wildly unfair? Or is it going to be, the same thing as it has been? Because, again, if you get bit with an injury bug, no matter how much money your payroll is, you're not going to win the World Series because your team is injured all year. And God forbid your team is injured at the end of the year, you're not going to win nothing. You're not going to win anything. So we'll see. I mean, is this going to be like rebuilding on the show with no salary cap? Is that what this is going to be? Now, listen. If you're willing to spend the money, if you have the money and you're willing to spend it, I think that's great. I really do. I wish more owners would be willing to spend money. But in baseball, it's not just ownership not being willing to spend money. It's ownership not having the money to spend at times. So, for me, I don't know if it's a good thing in baseball. Now, if it was something like this in basketball, right, and there was like no salary cap in basketball, and a team was willing to have a $500 million payroll, and you're willing to do that, I think that's great. But in that instance, everybody else would hopefully have that opportunity as well, and some owners would just say, listen, I don't want to spend $3 billion of my own money on freaking basketball players, so I'm just going to not do that, and we're going to stink a little bit. All right, well, that's your owner's choice, but I think in baseball, a lot of times it's not just, I know oftentimes it is owners just not wanting to spend money, but oftentimes it is just owners not having the money to spend. So, man, I don't know. I don't know if this is a good thing for the game of baseball. What I do know is that I don't think that this will last very long. I think that the Mets ownership is trying to give the Mets organization and their fan base something to believe in again after having a lot of really, really rough years throughout the 2000s and 1990s and 2010s as well, obviously. So I think that that's great, but I just don't see it as sustainable. I certainly don't think it's sustainable. Whether I think it's good or not, I don't think it's sustainable at all. So we'll see. We'll see how it happens. But I'm excited to see, how that team ends up kind of putting themselves together. And I think, who knows, maybe next year the Mets will go nuts again. And I'll be right back here a year from now talking about how the possible World Series champion New York Mets are spending $150 million in annual money again this offseason and just replacing the guys they lost. Who knows? Or I could be talking about how the Mets were in third place despite that giant payroll and it was a complete catastrophe. Who knows where we're going to be? But I'll say it right now, just to be absolutely definitive. Whether or not it's good for baseball, we'll see. I don't think it's absolutely at all sustainable. But if I had to lean towards one side, I would say this probably isn't that great of a thing for baseball. Hey guys, me again. Thank you so much for watching one of my clips from the Lopes Goes Last podcast. These clips are so much fun to do. I absolutely love making them and I absolutely love doing them. And this podcast is my baby. So I really want this thing to grow and I really want it to succeed. So if you did like what you see, please subscribe. Also hit that bell notification so you never miss any one of my episodes or one of my clips like this one. And please do also like and share these videos with your friends and your family so that we can make this thing grow as fast as possible. And I wanted to thank you again so much. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video and have a great rest of your day.